Hi, my name is Sharon Coleman. I am the host of the Perfection Rejection show, how to finally overcome your perfectionism and get shit done. And I am here today with Tiago Forte, which I hopefully am saying right. Am I saying that right?
That works.
Wait, how do you say your name?
Depends on the language. In English, usually people say Tiago Forte, but it's a Portuguese Brazilian name.
And how do you say it in Portuguese?
It would be Tiago Forte.
Say that again?
The T sounds like a C, like a CH.
Tiago
Forte.
Forte.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's gorgeous. I am here, but I'm going to say it a la English. I'm here with Tiago Forte, and he is one of the world's most foremost experts on productivity. He draws on his experience from working with top leaders in Silicon Valley, as well as academic disciplines of user experience design and information science, to teach tens of thousands of knowledge workers how to revolutionize their effectiveness using technology. Tiago believes that idea management is one of the most impactful skills in the world today. And his clients include companies like Toyota and Nestle. And he's been featured in media outlets such as the New York Times, Lifehacker, and Inc. magazine. So welcome, Tiago.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Really, really happy to be here with you.
I'm really happy to have you. So I would like to know a little bit off topic, but what do you mean by idea management?
Yeah, so my focus really in my work these days is a methodology and an online course that I've developed called Building a Second Brain. And I'm working on actually just yesterday finished the book proposal. So I'm turning the course into a book, but essentially it's about storing your thoughts, your ideas, your research, all the stuff that goes on in your brain, that whole chaos storm of thoughts and ideas. Instead of letting it kind of clutter your mind, offloading it or outsourcing it to an external software program, such as a digital notes app. And I use the term idea management just because knowledge management is an existing field, but it's very academic, kind of stuffy, these formal databases and knowledge collection procedures. Whereas on the individual level, which is really where I work, it can be very informal, very casual, just jotting down notes here and there. So that's the term I use for what I do, idea management.
I love it. So do you have specific apps that you recommend people use?
I myself use Evernote, which is probably the most popular digital notes app. But really, in my course, which I've had over 1,000 people take it, maybe only 50 or 60% use Evernote. The rest use probably a couple dozen different apps. And the reason they're able to do that is all the methods I teach, none of them are specific to any software program. It's not like you need that one feature, you need that one little, thing. Mm-hmm. They're very universal things about how to organize, how to file, how to sort, how to tag, how to highlight. So really, virtually any digital notes app works. You can use Notion, Microsoft OneNote, Google Keep, Apple Notes, Simple Notes, Bear. There's endless options.
Nice. That's useful. We actually had another one of our speakers is an Evernote expert, so we had a whole big. We all learned how to use Evernote.
Cool.
So what are the three biggest challenges that your clients and your students face when it comes to productivity and procrastination and things like that? Well,
let's see. Can I kind of focus in on the three main challenges that I see them have with idea management?
Yes, please do.
So idea management kind of fits within productivity, but productivity is so broad.
Right.
So I use both, but it's easier to answer that question if I can kind of zoom in.
Yeah, for sure.
The three things I talk about, when people say, why would I want to build a second brain? What's in that for me? And there's really three things that allows you to do, which is remember, connect, and create. Those are the three capabilities that you gain when you have a second brain. So, and this is what I see, remembering. People have just the hardest time. If you look at, neuroscience, the human brain was not designed to remember. It's almost designed to forget. So it's hard for us to remember, more than about a 7 or 8 digit phone number. is just about the limit of our memory. And so I just say, instead of making your memory better, which there's different like memorization tactics and memory palaces and spaced repetition and all these crazy things, I'm like, instead of trying to get better, just don't do it at all. Outsource that job the same way you would outsource, cutting your lawn to a gardener who comes around once in a while. Outsource your memory to computers.
Nice.
Second challenge is connecting. You have all these ideas. Think about the sheer amount of data that you've collected. All the not all of it is valuable, but some of it is the knowledge you have collected in your email, on your desktop, on your computer, in your documents folder, in dozens of different apps on your phone. It's really hard to connect and say, oh, this is related to that. This could help with this other thing. And this is why I ask people to really save all of that in a centralized place, or at least the things that are most valuable that they want to connect in a central place, which is a digital notes app. And then third is create. This is kind of the universal one and is very much in line with your topic of perfectionism is, in the past, if you were an artist, that was like a very specific profession and job title. And in society, the only people that created anything were like artists, musicians, poets, and playwrights, But in the modern world, we all have to create things. Every single person, you have to create emails, you have to create web pages, you have to create meeting reminders. There's like a million different things we have to create. And many of them are creative. They're actually not just like, generating a link, but you have to think about design and content and writing and structure. And so really this kind of ties back to Second Brain as well, where it's so much easier to create anything if you have this reserve, this collection of interesting notes, rather than the classic sitting at a blank screen or a blank page and just trying to like create something from nothing.
Right. So it's like having that outline sort of reserved for you.
Start with a list, or an outline, a brainstorm, like something rather than nothing makes it so much easier.
So why isn't this? So I guess why isn't this obvious to people that like what's going on in our minds that we think that we can hold on to all of this stuff?
That's a great question. I love that question because I spent a lot of time wondering this myself. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. I mean, on the one hand, I think it is obvious, and just in a different way. How many people, I would say it's close to 100%, keep grocery lists, or they make a list of, things they want to do on their next, like if they're planning a trip, a vacation, things they want to do. Like look around your world, both digital and physical, it's covered in lists. It's covered in notes. But then you just say, okay, make those same notes. Like think of a Moleskine notebooks. Millions of people keep some sort of notebook or binder or something, on their desk or in their purse or something. But then you say, okay, now let's make that digital. So then you can search it, you can reorganize it, you can tag it, you can share it with someone via a link, make it digital, and second, make it centralized. So it's not as useful if it's spread over, like I said, dozens of different apps. You have to kind of do a little bit of work to sort of centralize it in one place. But I think it's also just due to the spiraling complexity of modern life. My wife and I are planning on starting to try to have kids in the next year or so. And so I've been talking to my parents about, what that entails.
Well, if you don't know. There's a problem if you don't know how that happened.
Well, the having of the kid we can do. It's more the raising of them.
Yeah, there's no manual for that.
Yeah, right. So it's just funny because I'm asking them all these questions, like what do we do about health insurance, and which schools, and like this long list of questions. And my parents are just like, wow, raising you and your siblings in the 80s was so simple. Like it was simpler, you came home from school and we were like, did you do your homework? And you said yes. You're just like, okay, go play.
Right.
And I think like decade by decade, life just keeps getting more complex and we just need more tools.
A little bit off topic, but I disagree with your parents. I think what it is this younger generation of people having children are more awake and aware that they have this psyche that they're molding, Whereas the parents of the 80s, they weren't, I don't think they were as aware of the effect they had. So they weren't putting as much thought into it. They were just, oh yeah, did you do your homework? Go play.
Yeah.
Well,
interesting perspective.
That's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, and then compare them to their parents who were raising kids in the 50s. That's right. Hearing about that is just like, oh my gosh, that was a different world.
Right.
I think there's something to that. There's a sort of an evolving consciousness of parenting, which is, I think, a very optimistic thought that we're in some sense learning.
Yes, learning and improving, and that's the hope that each generation does. So that was totally off topic, so what do you recommend in sort of the centralizing of all of this? Do you have systems in place that you use that you recommend to your audience and your people that helps with this? Like, is there something you can share?
Yeah, so many. I'm so all about systems. We've talked about, a digital notes app, which is for your ideas and your research and your knowledge, but I use a wide variety of apps. I mean, I use scheduling apps. I have cloud storage, cloud syncing. I mean, is there one specific kind of category you want to go into, or?
So I think I'm thinking less the tools and more the human systems. Like what do we need to do on a daily basis to make sure that we are being as productive as we can be, collecting that and not letting the things fall through the cracks and still maintaining our creativity in the process.
That's great. That's actually what I specialize in, because tools are interchangeable. You can't be so sort of fixated on a tool because they get acquired, they go out of business, they change their design, their prices. So human systems, I'd say for productivity in general, the really key one is a weekly review. And this is a practice I learned from David Allen and the Getting Things Done method, which has been a huge inspiration. But, there's all these little things in your daily life that you never have to do them. There's never like, oh, it has to be done this minute. There's never urgency. There's never like a client or a boss being like, oh, you have to say, clear your Evernote inbox or clear your computer desktop or review your calendar for the next month. No one is ever going to say that. But if you don't do it, it's going to eventually break. And usually it breaks at the absolute worst moment.
Right.
So it's sort of like preventative maintenance, your car. You don't like, if you didn't change your oil, at the scheduled date, it would probably run for weeks or months just fine. But that doesn't mean you should not change your oil. You have to do the preventative maintenance, because if you don't, the what it's going to turn into is going to be 10 times as time consuming.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Because if you don't do that weekly review, then it's a monthly review and it takes 3 times as long instead of twice as long.
Exactly. And that's what I tell people. They say, my X review, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, takes too long. So then they do it less often. But the real solution is to do it more often. Because the reason it's taking so long and the reason they don't want to do it is because they waited until it's kind of this crisis moment. And doing it more often means making it a habit, making it this. I just have a little checklist on a little sticky note on my computer that has like 7 items. And every 2 to 3 days I run through it. It takes maybe an hour. And that little checklist completely clears my entire digital productivity world so that I can actually create things.
Do you mind sharing what those 7 items are?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. This is my favorite list. It's so tiny here. I don't know if I can screen share here.
You should be able to, actually. There should be a little green button at the bottom. Oh, there.
Can you see that?
Yay. Yep, I see it.
Yeah, this is my fancy, not fancy at all, fancy list. And it's funny because the amount of thought that has gone into this list is actually immense. I've changed it so many times over 6 or 7 years. There's actually 10 items. I lied. Clear email inbox. And the key there is I'm never doing anything. Like if you get sucked into actually completing tasks, that's how you never, ever get to the end of your email inbox, right? You have to just, for each one, decide what is the action, save the action in your task manager, and move on. If you do it that way, you can clear 100 emails in 30 minutes easy.
Nice.
Check my calendar. I always do 2 weeks in the past because I usually find something I need to follow up on. I need to remember. I need to send them something. I had a call with someone, need to send them something I promised. And then I look further into the future, 4 weeks, because then there's usually something I need to plan for, prepare for, something like that. Clear my physical inbox, which is really just my desk, whatever has accumulated on my desk. My notebook, if there's any notes that I want to take pictures of and save. I clear my computer desktop and my downloads. It's one of those things you think, like, is that really necessary? But if you never do it, eventually you log onto your computer and it's just complete chaos. Right. I process my Evernote inbox, or I do my budget review, which just takes a few minutes using an excellent app called YNAB.
I use YNAB too.
Cool. Yeah.
I love that app.
I love them. I process my Evernote inbox, which just means looking at the notes that have accumulated that week and filing them into notebooks takes just a minute or two. Then by that time, my task manager, which has an inbox, is full of things that I've captured from email, from notes, from the calendar. And then I batch process and I just file all of those open loops into priorities and projects. Review anything I'm waiting for, which is like a special tag. Review my Google Photos. So the reason I do this is my photos automatically sync from my phone to Google Photos. But sometimes there's business-related photos, right? Sometimes you took a photo at an event or it's a headshot that you could use. So I quickly glance through the photos from that week and I pull out any that I could potentially use in my business.
Nice.
And then the final step, which it's funny, the whole point of this entire process is there's one point, which is to generate a today list. What am I going to do today? Right. And you may think that's insane. Just, usually your top 2 or 3 priorities. But the thing is, you only really know your top 2 or 3 priorities when you've looked at everything, right? To have the confidence that nothing is falling through the cracks, nothing is being forgotten. You have to look at all these, at least I have to look at all these places. And then once I decide on the today list, I can just confidently execute for the rest of the day. And actually my today list is actually usually for the week. It takes me, I choose 10 to 15 items and then I complete them through the week.
I love that. So what do you have to say to somebody? So if you tend to get hung up in perfectionism, let me go back a second. Most of us haven't been doing this every day. So we probably have a pile of that stuff. Like, it's not going to be a 10-minute job until you got into a habit of doing it every day. So there's this backlog, right, to do that. What do you suggest people do? And in terms of people who tend to get stuck in the little minute details of making things perfect, what do you suggest they in particular do? Because I think those kinds of mountains become more overwhelming and insurmountable to somebody who has to get it just right.
Yes, I have a great suggestion, which I call a digital jubilee.
That sounds like fun.
It is. It's a fun word. It's a fun practice. And this actually comes from history, which I'm a big fan of. The Catholic Church, back through the centuries, every 100 years, they would declare what was called a jubilee. And what that was is they would just declare all debts forgiven. All the debts were just wiped clean. And the reason was very practical, which was a society that just has eternally accumulating debts is eventually going to get sick and die, right? If the debts just keep piling up forever, it'll become a disaster. And the same is true for our personal lives. Like, you may not think of it this way, but your digital organization has debt, right? In the software world, they actually have a name for this. It's called technical debt. Technical debt is all the stuff you should have been doing in the past that has been accumulating and piling up and that you now owe. And you owe interest and taxes and penalties on that debt, right? So this is something that I like to call organizational debt. And what I say is you actually don't have to pay it back. Right? Unlike, most financial debt, you can just declare, I'm not going to pay back that organizational debt. So for example, with your files, maybe you have thousands of files spread across your desktop, your downloads folder, your documents folder. It is not worth your time, trust me, to go file by file deciding, where does this go? Where does this go? Where does this go? That life is too short for you to spend your time doing that. instead. And I used to do this the place I learned this actually was working at the Apple store. People would come in with their old computers with years of accumulated junk, and I would have 60 minutes to help them with their Genius Bar appointment. And I was like, what can I do in 60 minutes? We would just create a folder that said archive and today's date. Get, in some cases, thousands, tens of thousands of files. Don't delete them because they could be valuable. Stick them all in that folder, put it in your My Documents folder, and just start over. If you need anything in there, they'll still be there in exactly the same disorganized state that you always had them. But now you can actually start from a fresh slate.
I love that. I love that. So you don't have to worry that it's disappeared. So that gives that sense of safety, but you probably will never look at it again.
Yeah, and if you do, you didn't lose anything, because it's not like it's in exactly the state that it was always in. It's just that now you can actually make an intentional decision to engage with those materials rather than every day feeling that guilt and the shame that you should be organizing it.
I love that. So do you have any other nuggets of wisdom to share with the folks that are watching?
Yeah, let's see. I guess one more thing along this line, which is, okay, so you do a digital jubilee. This is in fact exactly what I teach in my course, and I'm going to be teaching in some hours tonight, because the course is delivered via a live Zoom call. So this is very much where my mind is at. But after you do the digital jubilee, and you can do that as often as you want. You can do it once a year. Declare a once a year jubilee and just start over. But you may be wondering, okay, well, now that I've started with a clean slate, how should I organize the new things that come in? Mm. And the big insight that took me years to really understand is to organize by project, not by topic. Okay. And this is one of the key insights from that I teach is, when people say set up their folders on their My Documents folder or their notebooks in a digital notes app or anywhere, they tend to do it by topic. They do things like their interests, writing, productivity, marketing, health, these things. And what inevitably happens is the number of topics proliferates, and eventually, sooner or later, comes a day that you can't even remember all the categories. There's just way too much. And then you start either just putting them in whatever topic you first see, or you just don't do anything. And a much more effective way is to instead make a folder for each one of your projects. Make a project list. You'll likely have 10, 20, 30, 40, as many as that many projects that you're currently actively working on. And then just organize any file or folder or note that you create according to the project where it's going to be most useful and most actionable, right? Because taking a step back, what is the point of organizing at all? It's not so that your computer looks pretty, right? We all know people that their desk is pristine and then you open a drawer and it's complete chaos, or their room is clean, but then you open a closet and there's an avalanche of stuff, right? That is not what it means to be organized. What it means to be organized is that it enables action. You're able to take action more effectively. So when you have a dedicated folder for a project, even if it has very diverse things in it, if you can open up that one folder and have everything you need for the project, to me, that is the ultimate action enabler. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I understand you have a free gift you're giving away to the audience. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I have a one-page PDF to answer the most common question that I universally receive, which is, what are your top handful of productivity tips? We touched on some of them in our interview today, but this is kind of, a more nicely laid out, written out PDF. And to do that, just go to my website. Can I give you a link afterwards for them to visit to download that?
We'll put a link below the video so that they'll just be able to click and get it.
Perfect. Yeah. And that will just sign you up to my newsletter, which I send out free content every single week, whether it's an interview such as this one, or a blog post, or a template, or a video. And then you'll also get, as a bonus download, it's called my 6 top productivity tips for creative people.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been super helpful.
Thank you so much, Sharon. This has been a lot of fun.
All right, take care.